Relos the Four was a jewel of artistry, not of war. Its rolling hills were carved into amphitheaters where music floated into the night sky, and its crystalline oceans shimmered with the reflections of vast sculptures that could be seen from orbit. The Relosi were a people who celebrated philosophy over politics, song over steel. They had never built fleets or garrisons. To them, violence was an ugly relic of primitive times, but the galaxy had no pity for innocence. When the raiders descended, an armada of scavengers from the fringes of civilized space, Relos 4 had no answer. Their planetary defense satellites were few and outdated, relics purchased centuries ago from sympathetic traders. Their militia was a gathering of farmers, scholars, and singers with little training and even less hope. The first city fell in a single night. Fires spread across the plains as the raiders stripped the harvest fields bare and chained entire families for transport. From orbit, the once pristine settlements burned like embers scattered on a dark canvas. Governor Terra stood at the heart of her command chamber, watching her world unravel through trembling fingers. She was not a warrior. She had been elected for her fairness, her dedication to education and culture, not for her ability to repel invaders. Yet now, she was forced to order what every Relosi considered unthinkable, the activation of the ancient distress beacon. It was an old machine, cobbled together from forgotten technology, and kept more for tradition than necessity. The Relosi had long believed such a call would never be needed. After all, they were members of the Calorian Alliance, who had sworn protection to weaker colonies. Surely, if they sent out the signal, the Calorian fleets would come. The beacon was launched into the heavens, its pulse echoing through the void with a single encoded plea, SOS, under attack. Immediate aid required, but space is a vast and merciless ocean. Signals bend, scatter, and vanish in the currents of gravity wells and dead systems. The Relosi could not know that their plea would ricochet through ancient relay networks long since abandoned, bouncing off derelict satellites that had not been touched in centuries. One by one, the fragments of their cry drifted deeper into forgotten channels. And then, by chance or by fate, it slipped into a net no one dared touch anymore. The Terran net. For hundreds of years, the galaxy believed humanity had withdrawn into silence. After the wars of culling, when human fleets burned entire empires for crimes long forgotten, the Terrans had built walls of steel and shadow around their territory. They answered no calls. They spoke at no councils. They simply watched. Waiting, too. Most humanity had become a myth told in whispers. A reminder of a predator best left undisturbed. The archives called them Deathworlders, beings forged on a planet so hostile that survival itself had sculpted them into living weapons. Empires told their young, do not provoke the Terrans, do not enter their space, leave them alone, and they will leave you alone. And so the galaxy forgot. But when the Relosi signal flickered across the Terran net, the response was instant. Old systems, slumbering deep within fortified servers, woke at once. Red codes flashed, encryption locks snapped open, military networks lit up as if the wars of old had never ended. The first message transmitted outward was simple, no rhetoric. No hesitation, just a single phrase broadcast across every secured human channel. Distress call received, fleet mobilizing. Across Sol, across Mars, across the fortified shipyards orbiting Saturn, alarms sounded. Dockyards erupted with activity as warships powered up. Entire armadas stirred, their crews summoned from sleep or leave. The humans did not ask who had called. They did not ask why. The rules had been written long ago. Every call for help is answered. With fire, with steel, with finality. And far away on Relos 4, Governor Terra whispered to her advisors, "They will come. The Calorians will come." But the Calorians would never see the signal. Instead, Something far older, far deadlier, had heard the cry. One moment, their orbital scans showed the usual chaos of raider ships circling overhead, patched-together cruisers, old frigates, scavenger barges heavy with stolen goods. The next moment, the sky tore open. Their long-range scanners screamed as the void twisted with the ripple of massive hyperspace ruptures, dozens of them. Then, in eerie silence, ships began to emerge. Not the thin, elegant frigates of the Calorian Alliance, not the silver-draped vessels of the merchant guilds. These were black and angular, brutal in their geometry, each hull radiating a sense of purpose. War. They appeared one after another, a ceaseless tide of steel and shadow, until the very stars. Above Relos 4 were blotted out. The raiders, seasoned scavengers who lived on fear and preyed on the weak, froze mid-raid. Their comms filled with panicked chatter, voices cracking as their pilots tried to identify the newcomers. "Unknown fleet! Repeat, unknown fleet!" one shouted. "Not Alliance! Definitely not Alliance!" cried another. "They're stars!" Above, they're Terran. The word spread like a contagion. Terran. It wasn't supposed to be possible. For centuries, humanity had remained behind their walls, silent and still. The galaxy had grown used to their absence. Children grew up thinking of humans as bogeymen from old war stories, not real flesh and blood. Traders and pirates alike dismissed. The tales as exaggerated propaganda. But there, above Relos IV, the legends had arrived in the flesh. The flagship itself was a monster, larger than any battleship the raiders had ever seen. Its hull bristled with rail cannons and missile silos, its surface shielded by interlocking armor plates that shimmered faintly with active energy fields. It moved with terrifying calm, not drifting or lumbering, but stalking, like a predator, measuring its prey. Behind it, carriers deployed wings of sleek dagger-like escorts. Destroyers slid into formation with machine precision, their weapons already hot. Even the smallest Terran frigates radiated more menace than the raiders' largest cruisers. From the surface, the Relosi stood in terrified awe. Entire city populations poured into plazas and rooftops, craning their necks skyward. Their ancestors had sung of gods descending from the stars. Now they saw something far greater. Not gods, humans. The raiders' commanders tried to rally their forces. "They're bluffing! Humans don't intervene anymore! Just scatter, regroup, hit their flanks!" But their orders fell on deaf ears. For the raiders were not fools. They had spent lifetimes preying on the weak, and in that practice they had developed instincts sharper than any formal training. Every instinct screamed that these newcomers were not here to bargain, nor to warn, nor even to simply drive them away. They were here to kill. And across the nearby systems, others noticed as well. Listening posts hidden on asteroids, trade routes, patrolled by smugglers, even a Calorian scout ship on the far edge of the sector. All of them caught fragments of the Terran fleet's arrival. The whispers spread faster than light. The Terrans are moving. The humans have returned. Death Worlders answer distress calls again. Governors shuddered on their thrones. Admirals of proud navies hesitated before signing off on new campaigns. Smugglers rerouted their caravans. Pirates abandoned hunts mid-raid. And even the warlords of the outer fringes swore oaths to never cross into human paths again. Because everyone knew the stories. They remembered how humanity had fought wars not to win territory, but to erase threats. How they had turned enemy fleets into graveyards and scorched planets until the soil itself could no longer bear crops. They remembered the whispers of ships that fought even while burning, of soldiers who would rather bite through their own veins than surrender. If the Terrans had truly awakened, then no one in the galaxy was safe. Not even those who had not called upon them. Back on Relos 4, Governor Terra received frantic reports. "Governor, unidentified fleet has secured orbit." Governor, the raiders are retreating. No, wait, they're trying to flee. She turned to her council. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with both hope and horror. Could it be the Calorians? One asked weakly. Tara shook her head. The Calorians, for all their technology, never inspired this kind of fear. No, this was something older, something darker. The governor pressed her hands against the cold console and whispered words she did not want her advisors to hear. We called for help, but the stars answered with monsters. Yet even as fear filled her chest, another truth echoed just as strongly. The council chamber was filled with the sound of overlapping voices, fear, disbelief, hope, all of it mixing into a frantic storm. The orbital sensors showed dozens of human warships circling above, and every few seconds, another tremor of panic rippled through her aides. To the Relosi, this was unprecedented. She silenced them with a raised hand. "We must speak to them," she said. Her voice wavered, but she forced steel into it. "Whatever they intend, we must know." The communications officer hesitated. "Governor, if they are truly Terran, then to open a channel is necessary," Tara snapped. "If the myths are true, then to remain silent is worse." With a nod, the officer patched through the request. For a long moment, only static answered. Then the chamber's central display flickered, stabilizing into the image of a man, the human admiral. He sat in a command chair framed by harsh steel and glowing consoles. His face was pale, his hair cropped short, his expression carved from stone. His uniform bore no decoration save for a simple emblem on his chest, a human skull encircled by a wreath of stars. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, and terrifyingly certain. "We received your call." The chamber fell into silence. Governor Tara swallowed hard. "Admiral, she faltered. "We meant to contact the Calorian Alliance. The distress beacon was misdirected. We did not—" The human raised a hand, silencing her with nothing more than the gesture. "You called," he said, his tone flat and absolute. "And humanity does not ignore distress." A shiver passed through the council. The governor tried. Again, her words tumbling out in a rush. "We are grateful, Admiral, truly. But I must be honest. We are unprepared for this. The raiders are not an army. They are scavengers, thieves. We thought a handful of ships. They are enemies," the admiral interrupted, his gaze unblinking. "And enemies of the weak are enemies of humanity." Those words hung in the air like a blade. On the surface, the raiders' fleets scrambled. Shuttles launched from plundered settlements, streaking into the sky in a desperate bid to escape the dark silhouettes now dominating orbit. The Relosi militia reported that ground troops were abandoning their positions, leaving stolen goods, and captives behind as they bolted for their transports. Governor Tara saw the streams of data pouring into the display. "They're retreating," she whispered, half in relief. But the human admiral leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. His next words were spoken without hesitation, as if he had known his decision from the moment his fleet arrived. "No survivors." The comms officer's hand shook. "Admiral, did you mean—" The admiral gave no chance for doubt. He turned his head, issuing orders to someone off-screen. "Fleet Command, engage. Eliminate all hostile signatures. The channel cut." Heartbeat later, the void came alive. The flagship's rail cannons lit up, streaks of molten tungsten spearing across the dark. Raider cruisers exploded before they could even power their warp drives. Carriers opened their bays, releasing swarms of drones that darted through the debris like sharks through bloodied water. Human destroyers surged forward in perfect formation, cutting down fleeing vessels with precision fire. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. From the surface, the people of Relos IV watched in awe and dread. The sky itself seemed to burn as fire rained down from above. Children clung to their parents. Elders wept openly. Some whispered prayers of thanks. Others whispered prayers of fear. Inside the council chamber, Tera's aides were pale and trembling. One of them whispered, "They could have let them go, driven them away." Why? The governor did not answer. She already knew, because humanity did not fight wars to win. Humanity fought wars to end. She turned her eyes back to the display, watching the terrible beauty of the human fleet's efficiency. Her heart ached with gratitude for her people's salvation. Yet the pit of her stomach churned with something darker. They had been saved, yes, but at what price? And a question she dared not voice whispered in her thoughts. If this is what they do for strangers, what would they do to their enemies? The chamber shuddered as another raider vessel was annihilated, in orbit. The humans were not saviors, not in the gentle sense her people knew. They were executioners, wielding salvation and destruction as if they were the same blade. From the planet's surface, the Relosi stood in stunned silence as the heavens raged. Families huddled in temples, their children staring wide-eyed at the streaks of light tearing across the darkness. The raiders had ruled their skies for weeks, spreading terror and misery. Now those same ships were nothing more than burning wreckage tumbling toward the atmosphere. The humans did not fight like anyone the Relosi had ever seen. Their attacks were not chaotic bursts of anger, nor the careful, measured strikes of the Calorian Alliance. The Terran fleet moved with perfect coordination. When a raider ship tried to break formation and escape, destroyers were already in its path, rail cannons primed. When shuttles darted between debris fields, human drones chased them down like predators hunting prey, cutting their engines with surgical precision before tearing through their hulls. And when the last cruiser made a desperate charge toward the planet's atmosphere, trying to use civilians as a shield, the flagship opened fire with a single rail salvo that split the ship into 3 burning fragments. Not a single piece made landfall. It was not war. It was extermination. Governor Tera and her council remained in the command chamber, forced to watch. The chamber's display showed tactical overlays of the orbital battle. Bright blue markers, human ships, shifted with uncanny unity. Red markers, raider ships, winked out one by one until only silence remained. Her advisors whispered nervously among themselves. They could have let them flee, one said. They could have captured some, questioned them, another argued. This is annihilation. Tera said nothing. Her hands trembled on the console as she watched the last raider vessel disintegrate into sparks. She thought of her people, the families dragged away in chains, the homes reduced to ash. She thought of the raiders' laughter, their cruelty. A part of her wanted to weep with gratitude at the justice being delivered, but another part of her recoiled at the cold, merciless efficiency of it. Moments later, the orbital feed shifted. The human admiral appeared once again. His expression was unchanged, his eyes calm, as if the destruction of an entire fleet had been a simple exercise. "Your world is secure," he said. "Your skies are free." A wave of relief rippled through the council chamber. But Tera forced herself to raise her voice. "We thank you, Admiral. Raylos owes you its survival." But she hesitated, searching for the right words. Why such force? They were raiders, scavengers. Surely a warning, or a show of strength, would have been enough. The Admiral's gaze locked onto hers through the display. His voice was quiet, but every word carried the weight of iron. Humanity does not send warnings. We do not send half measures. We do not fight to push an enemy back so that they may regroup and strike again. When we answer a call, we bring an ending. The difference is survival. The chamber fell into silence. Tera felt the meaning settle into her bones. To the humans, mercy was not allowing an enemy to flee. Mercy was ensuring no enemy would ever rise again to threaten the weak. She thought of the raiders' victims, the thousands already lost before the humans arrived. Their killers would never face trial. They would never answer for their crimes in a court of law. They had been judged, sentenced, and executed in the span of an hour. Her aides looked at her expectantly. Waiting for her reply, Tara forced herself to bow her head slightly. "Then, we are grateful, Admiral. Truly. May the stars record humanity's act of salvation this day." The Admiral gave no sign of pride, no acknowledgement of her gratitude. He simply nodded, once then cut the channel. Above the planet, the Terran fleet continued its work. Shuttles descended to provide medical supplies and food rations. Engineers deployed orbital relays to stabilize communication grids the raiders had destroyed. Drones swept the ruins of cities, dismantling explosives left behind by retreating raider ground troops. Yet everywhere they went, the same unshakable aura followed them: silence and fear. For the Relosi, the humans were saviors. But for the galaxy, watching through 1,000 whispered reports, they were something else entirely. The lesson had been carved into the void for all to see. When humanity comes, the enemy ceases to exist. And if the humans ever decided another empire was the enemy, then no council, no fleet, no power in the stars would be able to stop them. Governor, Tara stood on her balcony that night, staring at the Terran warships blotting out the stars. She thought of her children asleep inside, safe at last. And she prayed that humanity would never see Relos 4 as anything but a world worth saving. No raider ships thundered across the skies. No screams echoed from burning settlements. Instead, the heavens were filled with the quiet hum of Terran engines, the vast silhouettes of their fleet still hanging like storm clouds above the world. To the Relosi, it was a strange kind of peace. Children peeked out from shattered doorways, pointing in awe at the black ships that seemed large enough to blot out constellations. Farmers, too afraid to return to their fields, gathered in village squares and whispered of the humans, whether they were saviors, monsters, or something in between. Governor Tara spent her days coordinating with the humans. Shuttles from the fleet descended regularly, offloading crates of food and medicine, escorted by Terran soldiers whose presence made even her most hardened militia officers uneasy. The soldiers were unlike any the Relosi had ever seen. Clad in heavy armor, their movements efficient and wordless, they radiated the same cold precision as their fleet. When they distributed aid, they did so without ceremony, as if this was not generosity but procedure. They asked for nothing in return, yet their mere presence carried an unspoken reminder. Humanity acted not out of charity, but out of principle. The principle was simple: no distress call went unanswered. And once answered, the threat was ended. Permanently. In the council chamber, Tara pressed her advisors for reassurance. "They mean us no harm," she insisted. "They have saved us. We owe them our survival." But her counselors could not hide their unease. "Governor, do you not see? If this is how they treat raiders, what would they do if we ever angered them?" One whispered. Another added, "The Calorians would have driven the raiders away. The humans annihilated them, entire bloodlines erased in less than an hour. Is this salvation? Or is it domination?" Tira had no answer. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the ripples of Relos 4's salvation spread. In the outer fringes, pirate lords ordered their fleets dismantled and scattered rather than risk crossing. Human warships. In the trade routes, smugglers rerouted entire networks to avoid even the chance of passing near Terran space. And in the great capitals of the empires, rulers convened secret meetings. The question on every tongue was the same. Why did the humans answer? The galaxy had long believed the Terrans dormant. The last war they fought had ended centuries ago, when they withdrew behind fortified borders, their fleets silent, their ambassadors absent from every council chamber. For generations, that silence had been mistaken for retirement. The great powers had comforted themselves with the thought that the humans were content to fade into obscurity. But now, with a single misplaced SOS, the truth was undeniable. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was waiting, watching, ready to act the moment they deemed it necessary, and their act had been decisive enough to send shivers through every throne and war council. Back on Relos 4, the fleet lingered for a week. Terran engineers repaired orbital satellites, built stabilizers for crumbling power grids, and even left behind automated defense platforms in orbit. The Relosi were astonished at the thoroughness. When the Calorians sent aid, they typically demanded resources or trade agreements in return. The humans demanded nothing, yet that too unsettled Terra. She stood on her balcony each night, staring up at the looming shapes of Terran ships. She tried to decide which truth was worse, that the humans were utterly selfless, or that their mercy was merely another weapon, one that bound the Relosi in chains of gratitude and fear stronger than any raider's shackles. When the day finally came for the fleet to leave, the planet gathered to watch. The great flagship, flanked by its escorts, lit its drives. One by one, the Terran ships slipped into hyperspace, vanishing into the void as swiftly as they had arrived. They left behind. No promises, no threats, no messages, only silence. And yet, the silence was louder than words. Governor Terra knew her people would forever remember the day the humans came. Songs would be written, histories recorded. Children would grow up hearing the tale of how strangers from myth had arrived like gods of war to crush their oppressors. Gratitude would fill their hearts. But deep down, fear would linger too. Because the galaxy had seen what the humans could do, not to armies, not to empires, but to raiders barely worthy of the name. If such overwhelming force had been unleashed on scavengers, what might humanity's wrath look like if aimed at a true enemy? The lesson was etched into every mind that had watched. One wrong call, one misplaced SOS, had summoned the deadliest fleet in the galaxy. And now the stars themselves seemed to whisper a warning. Humanity still watches. Humanity still answers. Humanity still holds the power to end wars before they begin.